Wow.
There is another court script, which I was briefly reading through, and some of it's okay, but I'm not so sure where that information came from. It's interesting stuff to challenge the prosecutor and the judge and
Right.
circumstances, but it's not the Mark Stevens script, which was all based around the conflict of interest.
Right.
You can't have a fair trial if there's a conflict of interest.
Right.
And the conflict of interest is that they all work for the state.
Yeah, that's right. Who do you work for?
Yeah. So it was an interesting little script, and he mentioned that if you look it up, there were other people mentioned that, it's like every other sovereign citizen, it's all bullshit. There's never a case that's been, won by doing this. But they dismiss the cases. They're not won. They dismiss the cases and then they disappear from the record. So, there's never ever any evidence of a win by whatever it is that you do.
Right.
But he's mentioned that there are people, and I've listened to radio shows that he used to do. I don't know if he still does. Where callers have called in and said, "Yeah, I did this, whatever traffic citation thing," and the prosecutor just stood up, made some excuses, or the judge just dismissed it, and it went away.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they don't want people knowing about it, though.
No.
Yep. Well, there's actually a House Joint Resolution from 1940 where the Congress says that there's 2 million of our sovereign citizens come of age, and they need to know their responsibilities in our Republican form of government.
Every year.
Every year, yeah.
Now, I remember that, and it's mentioned, like you said, in the congressional record somewhere, that sovereign citizens was a description of patriots.
Right.
But they've turned it into a dirty word now.
Yeah, that's right.
And technically speaking, it kind of is, because it's a misnomer anyway. You can't be sovereign and a citizen.
You know what? I don't agree. Because I'm a citizen of Pennsylvania, capital C, because I was born there. But and that's with a capital C. The sovereign citizen in that HJR resolution is all lowercase, which is common law. I'm a common law. Sovereign describes the type of citizen. You're king, sovereigns without subjects, you said, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm okay with that. Sovereign, small s.
Right.
We're all common law sovereign in our natural state under our creator. But then the governments tend to start trapping us, from my perspective.
Well, yeah. Well, they really, and that's what I brought up in my court case, because the U.S. attorney called me a sovereign citizen, and so did the attorneys for the county of Montague. And I said, first of all, I told them about the House Joint Resolution, and then I told them about the U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. versus Carlisle, where the Supreme Court said that everyone and everything not privileged is sovereign. And I said, so the question I have is, why are you not sovereign? And, I forgot, you're a government employee. That's a privilege. That's maybe why they hate sovereigns. And this is a direct attack against the Republic.
Yep. Yeah. It's treason.
Yeah, that's treason. And so now you attack them. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they never said it after that. Taking reprisals of war crimes. I started accusing them of war crimes, taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs. So this is the brief. Under the rules, you do a motion and then a brief. And in this case, there was a notice of constitutional challenge. Under their Rule 5, you have to do a notice of constitutional challenge. And so the notice basically says it's challenged. The constitutionality is challenged based on the information in the brief. And the brief becomes the appeal record. And so this is the brief. And so let's make this bigger so it's easier to see. Matter of fact, maybe I'll close that. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm just making sure that it's going to look right in YouTube. And it is. So this is the brief in support of the notice of constitutional challenge. And I like to rub it in their face because all their rules are color of law. So comes now defendant providing notice to the bought and paid for clerks masquerading as judges in this inferior legislative court that their executive branch congressional handlers in the District of Columbia, that their 1871 corporation, a 16 Stat 419, domiciled in the District of Columbia, and its minor estate, the scam, at 31 CFR 363.6 are violation of the organic laws as follows. There's 4 organic laws for the United States of America: the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and Perpetual Union. See, I added that in there, Nelson.
I noticed. Good job. And it makes sense, right?
Right, of course.
It helps everybody.
It's in there. Well, it's part of the title.
Part of the title, and that's why Lincoln was correct. They were not allowed to leave.
That's right. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 and this Constitution for the United States of America of 1787. The District of Columbia 1871 Municipal Corporation is a violation of the organic laws because it is Roman law from the Vatican, which is the Roman cult. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases, meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action, which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, which violates Article 1 in Amendment, which requires Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And that's the First Amendment, and is bringing in the Vatican's Roman law into the land of America, which uses fraud and deception, satanic, to supersede and replace common law. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. And then under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exception to its application, which is the reason for the War of Independence. Oh, damn. There we go. Which is the reason for the War of Independence is found in the causes and necessities for taking up arms. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And it's also talked about as some of the reasons for separation from the tyrant in the organic law of the Declaration of Independence. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, that's clearly talking about that minor estate right there. For imposing taxes on us without our consent, that's the minor estate. For depriving us in many cases of benefits of trial by jury. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us.
I want to thank you for making sure the style is correct, because I notice it's perfect the way you have it, and there's a reason.
Yeah, of course. Well, I probably pasted it out of your document. Anyways, because common law is the law of the land, which has always been here. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land long antecedent to the organization of the state and can only be taken from him by due process of law. That's Hale versus Hinkle, U.S. Supreme Court, 1906. And it is full of fraud and deception, which is the same reason why we took up arms against the Vatican's tyrant and for all the grievances listed in the Organic Law of the Declaration of Independence, 1776. The minor estate and the county of Montague. See, I haven't added in anything about the bar members yet, about the National Bar Foundation. But so far there's just this stuff right now.
And
But
Ned sent a TikTok today that called it. He dug something up related to the bar. So if you get a chance there's another name to it.
okay.
So when you look at his TikTok.
The minor estate that the county of Montague and the Vatican's bar members and the Vatican's bought and paid for clerks masquerading as judges have assaulted and demanded with are also a violation of the organic laws under Article 1 and Amendment, which requires Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion. The minor estate was created by the Vatican, and this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. When they had driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which all lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs, to the use of the religious houses. Usufruct, Roman law, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to assesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main.
So the Vatican created the minor estate?
Yeah.
What was the original purpose of it?
I think it's to enslave us.
It's tricksters.
Yeah.
So it was never really something for...
I think the original was based out of the fire of London in 1666.
Well, that was all part of it.
That wiped out most of the population of London at the time. It killed an awful lot of people, and they had no way of knowing who was who and who.
Well, they
what.
probably used that. Actually, the fire of London, I think, is kind of like Nero burning Rome.
Yeah.
I think they may have said it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think they do. They do an awful lot. But it's problem, reaction, solution.
Exactly.
In dialectic.
Yeah.
They make the problem so that they can issue the solution.
That's right.
This is the solution to the problem.
But it says this in Tomlin's Law Dictionary. It says they're the ones that created it.
And I think it has to do with the clergy, which we have a hard time understanding as Protestants. Catholics understand clergy are in charge.
Well, I mean, for the longest time, people like us couldn't even have a Bible to read it, to understand what was in it. And it's clear that they controlled, if you had certain books, they'd kill you, I mean, the Council of Nicaea is a perfect example. They decided what we're going to have for doctrine, and a bunch of people said, oh, well, hold it, I got a problem with that. And a bunch of Roman soldiers came out and killed everybody that had a problem. And then they said, does anybody else have a problem? You know what I mean? So they wanted to control what was truth and everything.
Right. So your comment, which you read it, and I'm still trying to fully comprehend it, where you talk about necessity use for the religious houses, distinguishing the possession from the use.
Right. Well, that's
it
actually
takes a long time to comprehend.
Right.
All the land was diseased.
Right.
It takes time to comprehend what those words mean relative to the minor estate and how the bank has cooperated with the Vatican, with the governments to control the minor estate and therefore control the body, which is how they take us away.
Right.
put us in bondage.
Right.
And collect from the minor estate, which is related back to the fake money. So it's a big vicious circle.
Right. It's all about fraud and deception. And usufruct, it's Roman law. If you understand Roman law, it's all about slavery. That's the whole purpose of Roman law, is to enslave people. A usufruct. I mean, and it talks about slavery. It's all over the place. I've got some quotes from Roman law in here, from the Commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, which is a book written by Roman lawyers in 326 AD and translated by some guys in England. And it talks about usufructs and stuff like that, and Roman law. Roman law is all about slavery.
And it goes to the capitis de minutio, too.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So,
anyways, and by the Vatican's tyrant with the Sestakv Act of 1666, which is for land titles, was brought into America with the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1432, where it says the legal estate to be in the Sestakv use, which was codified at 31 CFR 363.6. Entity means any owner of a Treasury direct account that's not an individual. Entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, or professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. And a minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also referred to an individual who has attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. And so
this is in your lawsuit against a county that's trying to take your land.
Yeah.
Because you didn't pay tax, that you refused to pay. They went ahead and sent a sheriff to take it, and then you filed a lawsuit, and you're saying that the tax is unconstitutional.
yeah, I think I'm gonna.
Double is there.
Sorry?
Yeah, double is after the minor.
There's a repeated word is always saying that. There you go.
Good point.
When I was researching birth certificates, I went over here to where they have the hospital and the local municipality that gets to get in on the action when they record the births and send it on. It's completely private. You can't get at it. New Jersey statutes won't let you even look at any of it. Meaning the process when the baby's born.
I've heard Pennsylvania's the same way.
They have to, yeah. And the municipal clerk of the city is in on the action, like they're in charge of it. So that's how they're making extra income, is because they get paid when they process the
Right.
papers. And just as a side note, in New Jersey, it says that every warrant you've been taken away on a warrant, right? The Constitution of New Jersey currently says that no warrant shall issue unless it particularly describes the papers and things to be seized. That's all it says. No warrant shall issue unless it particularly describes the papers and things to be seized. Are you a paper or a thing or both?
Well, that's a good question. They're treating you as a thing.
Exactly. So they're telling us
It's the minor estate.
we don't know any better.
They're playing stupid.
And I've said
It's
this
presumptions.
in front of my city council. I read it. I said, this is a certified copy of the Constitution you're sworn to support. But see, they don't realize that they can do the right thing by the non-gold fringe flag.
Right.
Their oath to support the Constitution of the United States.
Well, yeah.
So they're afraid they're going to be railroaded because they refuse to do what the Constitution and laws of the state of New Jersey say. And that's where I finally got the local chief of police to say, I'm protected by my oath to the Constitution of the United States.
Not anymore.
No, he is. He is protected, meaning he's protected that he can do the right thing by not arresting me. See, they had to arrest me,
Right.
when they didn't understand, because that gold fringe flag is the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the Corporation of 1871, which enforces the minor estate.
Right.
So if we're men and not minors, so I'm just kind of giving him a basic foundation because he has to catch up a little bit to understand what you're talking about here.
Right.
And so he understands the words that you're saying. And we've discovered all this just in the last 5 or 10 years, really. Because we weren't discussing anything.
Well, they keep it all hidden.
Yeah. So as we dig it up, they want to put it back under. So when I actually read the Constitution of New Jersey, I'm like, wait a minute. It says no warrant shall issue in the Constitution. It says no warrant shall issue unless it particularly describes the place to be searched and the papers and things to be seized. And if you go to the 4th or 5th Amendment, it says persons to be seized. Like, that's the point.
Right.
And it's lowercase there, and I think that's okay, meaning common law, under common law.
So, anyways, I just changed this paragraph B, which is codified at 31 CFR 363.6, because a minor is also used to refer to an individual who's attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities in his or her minor account, and an entity is the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor, which puts you under the Commerce Clause.
Well, they try to put us under the Commerce, unless we can combat it. And you're saying that it's unconstitutional, which is why the lawsuit, you're saying they can't take his land because he's not a minor, is his point. They're
Right.
saying they can
Well,
take it.
I put it on the face of the deed that I'm a living man.
So how we take title to land blocks the state and the government from taking it. But the way they have us railroading when we get a
Right.
mortgage and pay taxes, that's why they can come and take the land.
Which is talking about land titles, and a use is short for usufruct under Roman law. Those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are a usufruct, an obligation to service on part of freedmen contracting by oath in matters enforceable by a statute. So it's all Roman law. And this is taken from the commentaries of Gaius and Rules of Ulpian, translated with notes, which is a type of a trust. And a U.S. citizen minor estate entity is a taxpayer. And then there's this: every taxpayer is assessed to K trust, having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. In Bolins, and then Congressional Record, citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive Sesticate Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc.
Would you say that it's true that a taxpayer is the name is the taxpayer and not the man?
Yeah, it's a minor estate.
So
For sure.
So the taxpayer,
It's a fiction.
It's a
That's
fiction.
That's why in the income is defined as corporate profits, right? Corporations have to pay the tax. And that's why I took the IRS to the Supreme Court, and that's why they don't want to talk to me now. Because I pointed all that stuff out. It's a minor estate.
right? So the minor estate is the all caps name, which is a civilly dead. He went down a little bit, but right above there it says a citizen of the United States, quote unquote, is a civilly dead entity. And that's how they locked us up. So we have to discharge their power. We have to take the power away from them charging the name, and therefore they can't take us away. Until
Yeah,
we
but I
do
put
that-
on the face of that deed
No,
a living man, okay? And I sent them a notice in demand. So they're going to have a problem, I guarantee you, because I told them that I'm a living man. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'll be back in a second.
What's usufruct here?
usufruct.
Just Google it.
Yep. Look it up. Definition: usufruct. And it's basically the use as opposed to the possession. Usufruct. You have the right to use something. When you sign a lease, you kind of have a usufruct, the right to use something. So they're, in their system, they're saying they have a right to use us because they own the name, which was handed to them by our parents. This is the scam of how they get to take us away, signing a warrant. A fake judge doesn't even have to sign the warrant because in their world, we're minors with no rights.
The right to the use and profits of something belonging to another.
Correct. So you own your body, but they own the usufruct in their world.
Yeah.
They own the right to use you, to put you in jail, to have you pay them taxes. They claim the right to the use of our labor. This is what this is what Glenn's saying is the War of Independence was fought for this very reason, because they were coming here trying to attach us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all it says the KV Act of 1666.
Correct.
Anyways, the Vatican's minor estate creates the presumption that everyone is dead because it's political. When a state forms a constitution which is approved by Congress, it's a stop to deny its validity. The action of Congress cannot be inquired into, for the judicial is bound to follow the action of the political department. And the dead have no rights and fall under the Commerce Clause. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
And the Commerce Clause is interstate commerce, correct?
Yeah. Well, they're using Federal Reserve notes.
Right.
So that's evidence of the interstate commerce. The Vatican's minor estate is owned by the government because it's in the regulations. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. So because it's in the regulations, it's owned by the government. Vatican's minor estate's also talking about some of the reasons for separation from the Vatican's tyrant in the organic law of the Declaration of Independence. And that's all the same stuff that we talked about before and earlier. Mm-hmm. If you want the Word file from this, I'll send you the Word file. So send me an email, okay? He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. He's abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us, which is the reason for the War of Independence is found in the cause and necessities for taking up arms. Let's see if anybody's saying anything in YouTube. Justinian deception? Yep, it is. "23 people watching this one. Statutes have been passed extending courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. Do we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us? That's dictatorship. Janet Yellen and her predecessors used the Vatican's fraud and deception with the minor estate entity, GlennWinningham Fern. This is Galatians 4:1. Now I say, the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all. To use it as justification to assault and demand it with the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The minor estate only applies in federal areas of Texas under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. In this state means within the exterior limits of Texas and includes all territory within these limits ceded to or owned by the United States. That's in Texas Tax Code, Section 151.004, because the word includes is limiting. And Montello versus Salt, U.S. Supreme Court, include or the participial form thereof is defined to comprise within, to hold, to contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. Include, and this is Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, to confine within, to hold as an enclosure, take in, attain, shut up, contain, enclose, comprise, comprehend, embrace, involve. Quoting Premier Products Company versus Cameron, which means that when they use the phrase in this state in any of their codes, it means it's only talking about territory ceded to or owned by the United States, and all legislative inferior fake court judges are 14th Amendment U.S. citizens and practice law only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. And this is Texas Government Code 30.0006. A municipal court of record is presided over by one or more municipal judges. A municipal judge, one, must be a resident of the state, be a citizen of the United States, be a licensed attorney in good standing, have 2 or more years of experience practicing law in this state.
So regarding jurisdiction, your whole point is they have no jurisdiction over taxes on the land that you own.
That's right.
That's
my land is not in a federal area of Texas.
Thank you. And your land also
they don't have jurisdiction over us either, because
right. The
we're
body
not in the territory that they're operating.
Right. Our body.
Let's add that in. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Our body is land as well, and our gold is movable land. Silver is movable land. It's all related to common law, which is why America is great. The United States is not great. America is great.
Yeah.
Because my land fails to be in federal areas of Texas.
Okay, that you're making it plain.
An assistant prosecuting attorney is licensed to practice law only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. And then, this is Texas Government Code. An assistant prosecuting attorney must be licensed to practice law in this state.
So
I think it's a great idea. I'll add that into all of these.
you're going to repeat it till they're tired of reading.
Yeah, but
it's like the water on the Wicked Witch of the West. Stop it, Glenn. Stop it. You're going to go, ah.
To be honest, they do the same thing in theirs.
No, they do.
Yep. And that's the good news of being under common law. But in New Jersey, in 1978, the state legislature said common law crimes in the state of New Jersey are hereby abolished. They're basically saying you are...
Yeah, you'll find similar stuff in every state.
Yeah.
There'll be similar stuff in every state codes.
My land fails to be in the federal areas of Texas. It's never been ceded under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Your land fails to be ceded land.
Or show me the evidence that it was.
Well, it's a civil matter. And this is now going to the Supreme Court. You stupid ass thing.
Right? They just acted like they said it was in federal area.
Yeah, they stole my land.
They stole your land.
Don't get me going. All judges practice law only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. And Texas Government Code qualifications. To qualify for an appointment as an associate judge under this chapter, a person must be a resident of the state in one of the counties the person shall serve, and be licensed to practice law in this state for at least 4 years. All bar members are allowed to practice law only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. The Board of Law Examiners, acting under instructions of the Supreme Court as provided by this chapter, shall determine the eligibility of candidates for examination for a license to practice law in this state.
We just assume it means the de jure state because we have to clarify it in our minds.
Well, we accept the teachings of the English language, the grammar, and such that they teach us in school. That has nothing to do with the law dictionaries and what they mean.
How long have you held that land that they stole?
Probably about 10 years. More than 10 years.
So all of a sudden they decided to.
Well, I actually know. What happened is it was under a trust. And when they started going after me, what they did is when it was under the trust, the taxes were only $16 a year. It wasn't worth fighting over. So I just paid them the $16 a year. Then they raised it like to $160. And so that was worth fighting over. So I transferred it to me, from the trust to me, and yeah, that's where it's at. All juries are only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. The Office of Court Administration of the Texas Judicial System shall develop and maintain a model for a uniform written jury summons in this state. And my land fails to be in federal areas of Texas. I'm going to keep repeating that. I think that's a good idea. All law enforcement agencies are only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. Each law enforcement agency in this state shall adopt a detailed written policy on racial profiling. All arrest warrants are effective only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. And my land fails to be in federal areas of Texas. All search warrants are issued only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. A search warrant is a written order issued by a magistrate that's directed to a peace officer commanding him to No search warrant shall issue for any purpose in this state.
And that's why in New Jersey, every warrant is in this state. It doesn't say it that way, but that's why. And it's not, that's why it doesn't apply to a man. Because it's only papers and things.
Of course, the Texas codes are effective only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. It says here, except as otherwise provided in this article 54.02, all laws relating to criminal procedure in this state. And my land fails to be in federal areas of Texas. All government agencies and political subdivisions are only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. To improve services to the youth, the department may cooperate and contract with the federal government, the government agencies in this state. And that's Texas Human Resources Code, interagency and intergovernment cooperation. The Texas Civil Practice Code is only in federal areas of Texas because it is in this state. The rule of decision in this state. And my land fails to be in federal areas of Texas. The demander heard there are no federal enclaves in Texas. This is U.S. versus Bevins. The exclusive jurisdiction of the United States having forts and dockyards ceded to them is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions are made. It could be derived in no other manner because without it, the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein. The state of Texas has authority over anything that exists by its own authority, is introduced by its permission. That's McCullough versus Maryland, and the demand was not created by Paxton's bar members, nor by Paxton, nor by the state of Texas, nor the United States. And in fact, the opposite is true. The individual, unlike the corporation, cannot be taxed for the mere privilege of existing. The corporation is an artificial entity which owes its existence and character and charter powers to the state, but individuals' rights to live and own property are natural rights, enjoyment of which an excise cannot be imposed. To deceptively assault the demandant with a quasi-contract. Assumpsit. In its origin, an action of tort, assumpsit was soon transferred into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract. Based at first only upon an express promise, it was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action of the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt, became concurrent with account, with case upon a bailment, a warranty, bills of exchange, and competed with equity in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts, growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment. Surely it would be hard to find a better illustration of the flexibility and power of self-development of the common law. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition.
Montague County was trying to unjustly enrich themselves by stealing your property.
You got that right. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which were not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They are contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious expansion of the sphere of contract over to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. And so this is Roman law. This is all coming from Roman law, which require the Vatican's minor estate or other fiction. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fictional law, so the Vatican's bar members and their county and Montague Corporation can assault the demandant with their Texas tax code with their forced rendition, which is why they use the Vatican's fraud and deception of capitis diminutio. Capitis diminutio is the destruction of the caput or legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, whites out the former individual and puts a new one in his place. And between the old and new individual, there is, legally speaking, nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of three ways: by loss of status libertatis. Thus, this is the capitis diminutio maxima; by loss of status civitatis, which is the capitis diminutio media, By severance from the agnatic family, this entails capitis diminutio minima, a textbook of the history of the system of Roman private law, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning the maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage, when he became a slave. It swept away with it all rights of citizenship and all family rights. Because the Vatican's fraud and deception of the capitis diminutio maxima is used when they enslave people, and they are Satanists using fraud and deception to sell people in slavery as collateral for their minor estate. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and his humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state, which are non-judicial proceedings, because whenever a statute's involved, the Vatican's fake judges actually have bought and paid for a clerk masquerading as a judge. When acting to enforce a statute and in subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. It's the accepted rule, not only in the state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial clerk for an agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency, which is why it's a bill of pains and penalties, similar to a bill of attainder, in violation of the organic law of this Constitution for the United States of America, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, and Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. Bill of attainder means a legislative act, no matter what their form, that apply either to named individuals or to easily ascertainable members of a group in such a way as to inflict punishment on them without a judicial trial. A bill of attainder, a special legislative act prescribing punishment without a trial for a specific person or group. Bills of attainder are prohibited by the U.S. Constitution, also termed Act of Attainder. A bill of pains and penalties, a legislative act, though similar to a bill of attainder, prescribes punishment less severe than capital punishment. Bills of pains and penalties are included in the U.S. Constitution ban on bills of attainder, Article 1, Section 9, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Also means they have no authority to do anything judicial and are fraudulently and deceptively presenting themselves as a court of law. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Their legislative inferior court might be a superior court of general jurisdiction under some circumstances. A court of general jurisdiction is presumed to be acting within its jurisdiction till the contrary is shown. Let's see what's happening on YouTube. Okay. But when a superior court of general jurisdiction undertakes anything that is in derogation of common law, it becomes quad hoc an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. To be the statutes that would deprive a citizen of the rights of personal property without a regular trial according to the course and usage of common law would not be the law of the land. And their maritime codes have absolutely nothing to do with common law. When, therefore, a court of general jurisdiction proceeds under a special statute, it becomes a court of limited jurisdiction for the purpose of such proceeding. That's Book 21 of Corpus Juris Secundum, Section 2, Courts. Accordingly, where a court of general jurisdiction undertakes to carry out a special power, a decision made in the exercise of such power is treated as a ruling of a court of limited jurisdiction, and the presumption applicable to a court of general jurisdiction that it acted within the scope of this jurisdiction does not apply. And that's Book 20 of American Jurisprudence, 2nd edition, Court, Section 103. It is familiar law that when a special statutory authority and derogation of common law is conferred on courts of general jurisdiction, such a court of general jurisdiction becomes quad hoc a court of inferior or limited jurisdiction. Therefore, it's actually an administrative hearing for their maritime code. Ministerial act is an act with a public officer as required to perform in a prescribed manner in obedience to the mandate of legal authority and without regard to his own judgment or opinion concerning such act's propriety or impropriety when a given state of facts exists. Discretion, on the other hand, is the power conferred on public functionaries to act officially according to the dictates of their own judgment. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. And not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely acts as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. It's the accepted rule, not in the state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial clerk for an agency. Judges who become involved in an enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency, which is a fraud and deceptive, because it is actually an executive agency working for the executive branch. The word executive administrative is synonymous with the word executive. The word administrative connotes of or pertains to administration, especially management, or by managing or conducting or superintending the execution, application, or conduct of persons or things. Thus, administrative acts are those which are necessary to be done to carry out the legislative policies and purposes already declared by the legislative body. In fact, it is common to use the two words in tandem, which is full of fraud and deception, because there's no judge for that proceeding. It was actually a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge that cannot do anything judicial. Ministerial officers are incompetent to seek grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. Where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. To put the demandant into bondage, selling the demandant into slavery, is collateral for the Vatican's minor estate, as described in 31 CFR 363.6, because an entity includes the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. And a minor can be an individual who's attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities in his or her minor account. Let's quotation mark that. They're fraudulently decepting you the Vatican's minor estate to bring the District of Columbia outside a maximum 10 miles square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which is using the Vatican's fraud and deception to unlawfully place the demandant under the Commerce Clause. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, with plenary power. And plenary power is a dictatorship. See right here, it talks about through their plenary power, and plenary power is a dictatorship. Plenary power is complete power over a particular issue with no limitations. The term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress, which is the despotism talked about in the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us, which is why the Vatican's bar members are name-calling the demandant a sovereign citizen like it's a bad thing, and implying the demandant's a terrorist for their communist handlers, when they know that House Joint Resolution 183, dated May 3rd, 1940, at 54 Stat 178, says in the preamble, whereas it's desirable that the sovereign citizens of our nation be prepared for the responsibilities and impressed with the significance of their status in our self-governing republic. Let's add this in, which is evidence of seditious conspiracy to overthrow. This Constitution there, that'll juice that up a little bit. And the Vatican's bar members are required to know that the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that everyone and everything not privileged is sovereign, all of which evidence their intent to perjure their oath to the supreme law of the land and make war on the Republic and engage in all of the reasons for the separation from the Vatican's tyrant listed in the organic law of the Declaration of Independence. This is prohibiting the free exercise of the demandant's religious beliefs in Article 1 and Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. As a Christian, because the demandant has a right to own land under natural laws found in the Holy Bible. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statutes required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people, which is satanic because the Vatican's a necromancer with their minor estate, or is bringing dead things to life to provide and prohibited under God's laws found in the Holy Bible. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consultant with familiar speech, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all these things are an abomination unto the Lord, and because of these abominations the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. And they're using fraud and deception of the Vatican's minor estate to engage in the theft of the demandant's land and populate the prisons by selling people into slavery. And if we're a Christian nation, we claim to be, they would get their necks stretched. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, maketh merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. And all fraud and deception and lies come from the devil and Satan. You're of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews or Christians and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. And that's the end of it. That's as far as I got.
That's beautiful.
Anyways. Yeah, so we'll see.
So it turns out that the Founding Fathers, through their organic laws that they put into place from the Declaration of Independence to the Northwest Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, the Northwest Ordinance, and then the Constitution, they were basically defeating the monarchy and the Vatican, who are always there.
Yeah.
Roman law is always there, and common law is always there, and it depends on which side we choose.
Yeah, well, if you go into those, I went through some of that stuff yesterday, and that stuff about attorneys, like commuting. Commuting is you're paying off the Vatican. You know what I mean? And for pious uses, usufructs. You see what I'm saying? It's all the Vatican. That's why people were leaving Europe in droves trying to get the heck out of here, and they indentured themselves for 7 years just to get away from it all. You know what I mean?
That's a good buy.
Want to get away from all that Satanism. It's all satanic. It's all evil. And they knew something was wrong. They just wanted to get away from it. I'm sure maybe they didn't know it was evil, but it certainly is.
I think they did know.
Probably did. Some of them, you read Blackstone, and that guy, you could tell he was a good Christian because he understood God's law, and he was a good Christian. And Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, eh?
Yeah, and they had that issue. They had over there in Europe, there was always that push and pull of the common law versus the state, essentially. The king and his parliament, or in France and Spain, the monarchy and the Vatican was constantly, there was the Catholic kings. So, and that's my question is, how can a Catholic be free, a true Catholic be free? Because aren't they, by virtue of their being part of the Roman Catholic Church, don't they have an obligation to obey the Pope?
I think a lot of them ignore it. Matter of fact, there's Joe, okay? You know Joe, right? He's Catholic. And his sister is a devout Catholic. And she calls the Pope Frank. So it's like just utter disrespect for him because he's not Christian. You know what I mean? They all know he's not Christian.
Right. So Catholic is the word. Catholic means universal, as opposed to Roman Catholic is basically the church, the Roman Catholic Church.
I guess. I don't know, but yeah. So I think a lot of them, like there was a friend of mine in Canada that was Catholic, that was telling me about this stuff a long time ago. And I refused to believe it. And it just became so overwhelming and so obvious that I couldn't deny it anymore,
Right. Yep.
But they're all Satanists. And not all Catholics. There's a lot of good and honorable people that happen to be Catholic. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of them that consider themselves Christian. And I would say they're as Christian as anybody else that claims to be Christian. Mm-hmm. There's certainly the Vatican. There's a lot of Satanists there,
Right.
And there was actually a Catholic monk by the name of Father Malachi Martin that went on Coast to Coast AM back in the 90s. And he came out and he said on Coast to Coast AM that the Vatican had been taken over by the devil in 1955 or something like that. And shortly after that, he turned up dead.
Yeah. And there's some good guy Catholic bishops and so on now that are basically, resisting.
There's a lot of bishops and cardinals that are good people, and I used to get stuff from this Catholic bishop up in the Northeast. Because I got their junk mail, from these Catholics up in the Northeast. So there's good ones out there for sure. There's no doubt about it. And they're not all, evil. But it seems like the ones that the Vatican has been taken over, and, I don't know how. So, there's cardinals, there's some cardinals at least that are satanic. According to that Fatima thing with those three girls that saw this vision back in the 50s, according to that, Frank is going to be the last pope, and he's actually kind of sickly right now. So, I guess we'll see.
He's hanging on.
He is. There was Kevin Annette sent out an email and saying that good riddance, he's dead. But it didn't turn out he was dead. He's just sick.
Right.
So, anyways, Kevin Annette was the guy that did that common law court. So, is there anything else we want to cover?
Just tell us where this stands as far as this, what you're preparing right now. You're in the Court of Appeals.
Right.
That's a federal Court of Appeals.
Right. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. And I have to send them the record. Matter of fact, I'll probably do that. Start tomorrow. I'll prepare it and get it on a CD. I've got CDs here. I got a CD burner, and I'll put it all on there, and snail mail it to them.
So you filed an initial action in federal court, in the district court for
Right.
the fifth, for the North Texas, or
Right.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then so then what happened? You filed it, and what was their response?
Well, in the past, I've had cases dismissed before I even had a chance to effect service. And so I think when they do that, it's more or less doing you a favor, so you don't spend any money on that needlessly. But anyways, so what happened in this case is the only orders I got from the judge is it was an order that said that I had filed this case on this day, and I filed a first amended demand for relief, and so then he counted the days out, and he said I had till the 2nd of January to have because of the holidays. He named the date when I had to have service effected by, and so he went, and so I knew he was going to take the case at that point, and then when he dismissed it. They dismissed it without prejudice, okay, which means that I can change my arguments and come back again if I want. And so I definitely have a case, and it should be in federal court too. But I think that they were doing because I filed criminal complaints into the case, and I wanted these people arrested because I'd filed criminal complaints into that case, and they just ignored all that stuff. So that ain't over. I'm still working on it. I want to get them arrested.
Agreed. So if they dismissed it without prejudice in the North Texas District Court,
right,
the federal court,
right,
why now? Who moved it to the Court of Appeals?
I did. I filed a notice of appeal. That's all it takes.
A notice of appeal.
Yeah.
Because you didn't like the dismissal.
That's right.
And rather than go back to the North Texas, you just went to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah. I think I had everything in there I needed to.
Right, and so the North Texas is just trying to erase it, saying there's nothing to see here, and you're saying yes, there is.
Yeah, right.
Is that essentially what's happening?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand how it's now in the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah, well, they dismissed it without prejudice, which means I can bring it again. Which means also that there is a case there. They didn't like the arguments that I presented, but after they dismissed it, I filed a notice of constitutional challenge because they're essentially assaulting me. I'm telling them that Will Livingston's my fourth great uncle. I'm posterity, and I'm not a corporation, and they're essentially assaulting me with that corporation. So they're saying that it goes back to this case right here, right? It says that I have to challenge the constitutionality of that thing, of that minor estate, and this is because of the act of Congress. Where is it? When a state forms a constitution which is approved by Congress, it's a stop to deny its validity. So this has been passed by Congress. I have to challenge the constitutionality of that minor estate because otherwise they're going to presume that I'm it.
Was the constitutionality of the minor estate in your original action filing with the North
No, I didn't bring it up.
Texas?
No.
Okay. So now there's a constitution.
But I brought it up at the end.
Okay.
I brought it up at the end. That it's unconstitutional.
The one that they dismissed without prejudice?
Yeah.
And therefore, you're appealing the fact
that it was dismissed.
Right. Who are they to not deal with the constitutionality? They were checking.
I brought up the I attached it.
The North Texas court.
Yes. Let me find the case right here. I brought up where is that? This is all the stuff I have to put into that appeal brief, but I got to organize it. Anyways,
And we're all having so much trouble because the country has been taken over. Is the problem.
right. So what I did is I sent, no, that's not it. I sent this to Janet Yellen, but that's not the issue. That's where I served her. Yeah, this is where, okay, so that's not the one. Let's see what else there is. Oh, right here. Some of these I attached appendix. This is that rendition, Texas rendition of Texas taxable property. And it says right here, the chief appraiser says, unless required by the tax code or the chief appraiser, rendering such property is optional. So the chief appraiser ordered it to be rendered. So I'm suing them too. The chief appraiser. I'm suing the whole board of appraisals. There's an appraisal board. This is the document. No, it's not. Oh, this is the deed. Okay, this is the deed where I transferred the land. And it says right here, a living man on the soil. Okay, so I'm not dead. And then this is the letter. I sent this to the county tax assessor collector. And I told him basically that you're engaged in multiple felonies. It's a standard notice and demand that I modified. And I sent it by registered mail to the tax assessor collector, the county attorney, the county clerk, and the county treasurer. And I basically go through and explain the law to them. And
At what point did you get
right here, here's the last paragraph.
Okay.
Says, your notice that this is a good faith attempt to get you to correct your records by taking my land off your tax rolls, and your failure to provide a bona fide contract by which I have knowingly, willingly, intentionally agreed to your taxes, and any further communication attempting to collect a set tax extortion, or because of my non-payment of your tax extortion, shall be multiple felonies, including but not limited to all of the crimes described herein. And this notice and demand shall be evidence of your intent to engage in all the crimes, including but not limited to those described herein. And it shall be further evidence that Clay Riddle, Kim Jones, Jennifer Panoglio, and others intend to be your accomplices and co-conspirators, as well as your agreement that I file criminal complaints against all of you and bar grievances against the bar members in your private capacity and seek other remedies. And so I'm saying right here, a sovereign living soul, a man, I'm not, fails to be a U.S. citizen, Sestake Trust. You see what I'm saying? I think they're going to have a problem. I can tell you. I really do.
Because they just proceeded after notice.
That's right. And here, the names, all block capital letters. So they're going to have a problem. I'm really hoping I get some of them in jail. See, and these were all served by registered mail. And what they were doing is they're getting ready to sell my land out from underneath me. Mm-hmm. So I had to pay their extortion.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to put all this stuff, I have to organize it. There's an index of exhibits and then I have to organize it. And put it on there.
That's me.
Onto the burn it onto the DVD.
Yeah. So, yeah, excellent. It's a lot of work. Freedom is not free, right?
Well, I feel like I was born for this, and I have to do something about it. I have to say something, and so I guess it's my destiny.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I got better things to do.
We understand, all of us.
So when they're getting ready to steal your land on you, it gets personal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, I got all my stuff. There's a storage unit on that property, and all my junk is in that storage unit. It's been in there because I'm basically homeless right now, and so. I have a room at Darren's place, but for many years I slept on his couch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, things are starting to come together, and I'm thinking that. This other lawsuit that I'm doing, this other lawsuit that I need to do, that this judge sent me an order of deficiency telling me I had to file a lawsuit, and so I'm gonna file it, and but I got to let this one kind of the dust settle. I can only do one at a time. There's only one of me. You know what I mean?
I do. Yep. We all suffer from the same problem.
Yeah.
There's only one of us.
It's a feeding frenzy. They're just nothing but a bunch of thieves and pirates.
Yeah.
They really are. They need to get their necks stretched. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going.
And that's where I claim the military tribunals, the Army, is, I think we're going to be there at some point because they have an oath to support the Constitution.
Well, Trump is doing what he can, but it takes more than just him, Right now there's 36 people watching my YouTube channel. But so
U.S. attorneys are key from my perspective.
Well, but there's a website called Targeted Justice. You want to see that website?
Yeah.
It basically is a website that talks about how, and it's got affidavits and stuff like that on it. Talks about how you go look around on this website, there's affidavits from people like Ted Gunderson. It talks about how they target certain people, and if felonies are committed against them, they refuse to even investigate them.
I hear you.
They refuse to do anything about it. Which is what happened with me. I filed felony criminal complaints and they refused to do anything about it.
Right. And that's because the criminals are in charge. Or have been. We're getting there.
Still, a lot of those criminals think that they're above even the president when Like the governor of Maine, was it, starts arguing with the president
Right.
about what they can do and can't do about transgender and school choice and what was the other one? Or letting transgendered males compete in female sports in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Trump had already told everybody, nope, that ain't happening.
Mm-hmm.
So these people still think they're above the law.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to interrupt him during when he was saying something, but it had to do with his municipal judge. See, that word municipal judge, what do we think of when it says municipal judge?
Local.
Right. What if every court that has a gold fringe flag is a municipal court? How does that change our tactics?
It depends on the definition of municipal, whether you're looking at it as a municipality of the federal district or a municipal local city government.
Right. Well, the flag, from my current understanding, is the flag is the key. That flag, whatever flag is the highest, is what rules the day. And that's why we have yet to take our flag into a case and see what happens. Because they may know very well the minute that flag shows up.
They may run out at that point. Or may not.
Right.
Some judges are knowledgeable and honourable.
Right.
Others just get very angry.
But we have yet,
Challenging.
I'm currently putting this into my the information about the flag is going in to some of my new cases because that the proper flag is what gives us the jurisdiction. Like like I see what we've been doing is more or less going into their jurisdiction and arguing. We need to basically trump them with who we are, and we're saying it in words, but we're letting that gold fringe flag keep flying.
Yeah, well, there's two areas of thought. There are some people out there right now who are saying, don't even go. It's their court, their jurisdiction. Why are you even bothering? You send them enough information to say that there is no contract. I'm not a party to whatever. I've committed no crimes. There's no corpus delicti. Or you could just say, there's no contract. I have no contract with you. Because everything else becomes contractual. That's why that Supreme Court case here was important. Because it mentioned that every man has the ability for what's it called? It's basically an innumerable number of contracts. They have an unlimited ability to contract, and they have an unlimited number of contracts that they can engage in. So what that court case said was that as a man, as a sovereign, as a living person, a free inhabitant, you can contract or not. It's your choice.
So this question is just occurring to me now. If I take in a non-gold fringe flag, if I take in my flag of the United States of America, is that part of my contract? Am I telling them this is my contract and I'm putting you under my contract, and therefore now what happens?
Well, that's easier said than done.
I know.
I mean, they're a bunch of pirates.
Yeah.
Yes, but we have no one has tested it that I know of, other than the Moors. And every time a Moor, the black Moors, fly their Moor flag and put it on the table, it gets dismissed every time. And maybe it's because
I think that there might be something to taking in the de jure flag and see what happens. But I've heard in the past, people would do that and they tell them, get that flag out of here. But I think things have changed, and especially with the regime change in D.C., there could be some positive things happening. What I want to do, I understand where you're coming from. I want to go through my demand for relief. This is the original one that I filed, and I get a little bit belligerent in here, but it proceeded. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's amazing what you can do. This action is brought as a collateral attack on a void judgment made by bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, Patricia Coleman Byers, in conspiracy with bar members named herein and their County of Montague mafia handlers named herein. So I'm naming a bunch of people here. And I did a first amended one, and I tried to do a second amended one, and the judge said you're allowed to do the first one, but if you want to do the second one, then you have to get everybody to agree to it, and they refused to even answer. Anyway, so for the second one, so there's actually a First Amendment one that I filed after this, but he called it a demand for relief, and I'm telling him this is a demand for relief. Notice the footer: demand for relief to the District of Columbia clerks selling their just us. Anyways. A void judgment is one which from its inception is a complete nullity and without legal effect. A void judgment, insofar as it purports to be a pronouncement of a court, is an absolute nullity. Void order may be attacked either directly or collaterally at any time. A void judgment is one which from its inception is and forever continues to be absolutely null without legal efficacy and effectual to bind the parties or to support a right of no legal force and effect whatever. The District of Columbia District of Columbia so-called court comes now to demanding that this District of Columbia clerks and this corporate so-called court selling their justice provide relief against the U.S. citizen wrongdoers named herein by regulating their property as required by Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States. I just want to look on YouTube and make sure that, yep, it's going through no problem. Which is the supreme law of the land, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Article 6, Clause 2. The District of Columbia courts are required to provide relief for the following reasons. Your Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 28 U.S.C. 1331, federal question because taxation of land originated with an act of Congress under Chapter 45, approved August 5th, 1861 at 12 Stat 292. Under your Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 28 U.S.C. 1332, diversity of citizenship, because all the wrongdoers are foreign U.S. citizens as required by Texas codes under the Commerce Clause, and the demandant fails to be a U.S. citizen as described herein. And this is that National Mutual Insurance Company versus Tidewater Transfer Company. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. So I'm telling them, I don't get an Article 3 court. But then if I don't get an Article 3 court, they don't have authority to make a ruling respecting life, liberty, or property, which they stole my property. So what's up with that? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And under your Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 28 U.S.C. 1343, civil rights, because wrongdoers are engaged in the theft of the demandant's land. The demandant has an unlimited right to own land. Under your Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 28 U.S.C. 1355, forfeiture, because wrongdoers are engaging in the theft of the demandant's land. Under your Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 1361, a petition for a writ of mandamus to order Chad Yarborough to do his duty to arrest the wrongdoers for their felonies, and Leah Simonton to do her duty to prosecute their felonies, because the wrongdoers named herein are violating federally protected rights under color of law, conspiring to threaten, coerce, injure, intimidate the demandant in a free exercise of his rights to own land, subjecting the demandant to their satanic religious ceremony, 18 U.S.C. 247, converting the demandant's land under color of law with forced rendering the demandant's land for taxation without any authority, impersonating a government employee to facilitate the theft of the demandant's land, participating in the extortion racket under color of law, demanding fake money for their mafia, unlawfully appropriate, engage in theft of the demandant's land, selling the demandant into involuntary servitude under color of law, forcing to work for them for nothing to pay their tax, extortion, scam, because of their objective is for the beginning was to enslave the demandant as evidenced by their Roman law capitis diminutia, because they're spelling the name in all block capital letters, which is a slave under Roman law, and they're operating under Roman law, making false and fictitious records by falsely accusing the demandant of being a minor estate, falsely rendering the demandant's land using Form 50-141, general real property rendition of taxable property, making false statements in court that the demandant's a minor estate, the demandant's a U.S. citizen, commercial entity under the Commerce Clause, falsely rendering the demandant's land for taxation, violating a government patent. There's a bunch of felonies that I listed there. Anyways, this so-called court is a District of Columbia corporation as evidenced by its use of a zip code, one of 10 federal sub-district regions in the District of Columbia under the Commerce Clause, and your demands for Federal Reserve notes, which are authorized for the District of Columbia only under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. Federal Reserve notes issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks, which is the reason why the bar member officers of this District of Columbia corporate so-called court have no trouble assaulting the demandant with their color of law rules, denying the demandant due process of law, compelling the disclosure of this information as none of their business, converting the demandant's rights into to justice into a privilege with their filing fee/license, denying the demandant a remedy for failure to tender their fake money. The District of Columbia corporate so-called court is busy assaulting the demandant with a zip code so they can justify assaulting the demandant with the Commerce Clause with a plenary jurisdiction where there are no rights, evidencing their intent to bring the District of Columbia outside a maximum of 10 miles square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, evidencing their intent to perjure their oath of office, evidencing their intent to be accomplices to these County of Montague thieves, which is why the demandant calls it just us, because they're actually bail priests for your Vatican god Satan, and the demandant shakes the dust of the earth from off against you, and we'll all be talking about this before the judgment seat of God on Judgment Day. Will Livingston, who ratified this Constitution for the United States of America on behalf of New Jersey, is the demandant's fourth great uncle, which means the demandant is posterity is found in the preamble and is entitled to right of blood because wrongdoers are using their civil laws against the demandant, and the wrongdoers are operating under a color of, says here, the right of blood and kindred cannot be destroyed by any civil law. And the wrongdoers are operating under a power which is derived from the demandant as posterity. And the Supreme Court of the United States, it's impossible for the demandant to confer sovereignty which will extend over him. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. And we, the people, failed to be U.S. citizens because a U.S. citizen failed to exist when the Constitution was written. And the bail priests in this District of Columbia corporate so-called court failed to care about any of this, but want to sit there and play stupid so they can collect a filing fee royalty for their retirement. These wrongdoers are bringing in business for this District of Columbia so-called court corporation right now, and it will bring in more business when the demandant arms up, goes out there and defends his right not to be their slave with lethal force if necessary, and it'll bring in more business when they put these thieves on trial for their felonies. So any way you want to look at it, these District of Columbia courts will get to sell their justice again and again and again, and it will be a satanic blood sacrifice for their Vatican god Baal when they murder the demandant for defending his right not to be their slave, and defending his right to be, and their thieving bankster buddies get to pillage all the fake money in the Treasury direct account under the minor estate, under the Hague Convention concerning the international administration of the estates of deceased persons, concluded 2nd of October 1973. And if the demandant does turn up dead, this is his deathbed testimony. The demandant has never in his life breached the peace, but these screen for low intelligence military police like Thomas, named herein, breach the peace on a routine basis with their unlawful arrests and their assaults and their thefts and the theft of the demandant's land they're threatening to do, and their murders, like their murder of the demandant, like when the demandant exercises his right to resist their slavery, and theft with lethal force if necessary, all of which is under supervision of bought and paid mafia whores like Byers and McGaughey in conspiracy with the Vatican's bar mafia named herein. The demandant's not a bar member and therefore not pro se like the clerks like to assault the demandant with, but proceeds in propria persona. The demandant has brought numerous lawsuits before these District of Columbia clerks selling their justice, and they refuse to let it proceed until their extortion's paid, because it brings in so much business for the District of Columbia corporate so-called court, as evidenced by the fact that Deborah Spisak, clerk of the Second Court of Appeals, denied the demandant due process of law under color of Texas vexatious litigant codes by refusing a petition for writ of mandamus because Thomas Lowe, in conspiracy with Keith Ogle, Stephen Lunt, Sharon Wilson, and David Evans, conspired together to label the demandant a vexatious litigant because the demandant's failure to pay the extortion demanded by the bought and paid for clerks in this District of Columbia corporate so-called court. The demandant has offered gold or silver coin to the clerks in this so-called court, and they immediately converted into their fake money, evidencing their fake court status in the District of Columbia. The demandant has a right to resist slavery with unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary, as evidenced by the Amistad, which was a slave ship where the people killed all of their captors and enslavers, except for one, because they didn't know how to sail. And they demanded that one survivor take them back to Africa, and where the Supreme Court of the United States dismissed the murder charges and ordered them returned to Africa. Wrongdoer, anyway, so I get quite belligerent in here. Yeah. I thought I had it in there. How about this? Oh, wow. That's interesting. Anyways, let me find that other one. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I knew I had it in here somewhere. Enticing to slavery, because when the demandant exercises his right to resist their slavery and their extortion racket, selling his land with lethal force if necessary, and blows their brains out, and they fail to murder the demandant with their mafia District of Columbia so-called courts, will sell the demandant into slavery in their Texas kangaroo so-called courts with a quasi-contract as collateral for their Vatican minor estate, just like they did with James Michael Tessie. I was surprised I only had that in there once, though. Thought I had it in there more than once. Right. Blows their brains out. I'm surprised it's not in here. I thought it was. Huh. Okay. So that's the first one. And then the second one, that's the one I filed. They couldn't stop me from filing that. And then then there was a second amended counterclaim that I tried to file, and I had to get the other attorneys to agree to it, and they wouldn't. So,
Well, your work keeps getting better and better and better all the time.
yeah, well, I toned it down on the second one. It was I toned it down, but they did make comments about the lawyers did. I have a right to resist in slavery. I'm not going to be their slave. So we'll see what happens. One thing for certain, if I was going to do something like hunt them down and blow their brains out, I'd never tell anybody.
It can be very frustrating. That's where the Old West, it was like, it was a fair fight.
Yeah, that's right.
You lost, he won, and we move on.
That's the end of it. Yep.
Duels.
Yeah. I can tell you that, well, you saw all of Joe's equipment, didn't you? Oh, you didn't? Oh. Well, he's got a lot of equipment, let me put it that way.
Right.
And he's got some, matter of fact, he gave me a book on a sniper book. And you do know that the Marines, when they do a job sniping, that it's going to be at least, they won't do it less than 300 yards because they have to be able to get away. There's not much use in doing something like that if you can't get away. You know what I mean? And so it's got to be at least 300 yards. And that's quite a ways away to get a shot that's going to be fairly accurate. You know what I mean? But, so that's kind of interesting. I got some books on that. So not that I'm thinking about doing that. We'll see. It's in the courts. I'm hoping that it gets resolved.
Right. That's why it's called, you're civilly dealing. You're dealing with it civilly, in a civil manner.
Right. And they're just nothing but a bunch of thieves. It's these bar scum. And I guarantee you, by the time I'm done, I'll bet you there'll be some. I guess we'll see. You just never know. But these bar members are just the scum of the earth. That's really the real root of the problem. In my case, is these damn bar members.
I don't know where they get the chutzpah to charging $400, $500, $600, $1,000 an hour for their services.
Yeah.
Who the hell can afford that kind of fee?
Well, most of it's corporate.
The big fees.
Yeah.
That's corporate stuff. But you go and even family law and valid lawsuit, they're charging $500 an hour.
Yeah.
For a decent lawyer.
Yep.
And I say decent, but even that's debatable because we've spoken to a couple about some things that we're dealing with, and it was to kind of get a feel and advice. And the dumb schmucks, basically.
Yeah.
They know the procedure and the process. That's it. That's all they know. But it's to the general common sense of certain things, and
it's they can lie, and see, under their rules, they have to tell the truth, and but if they lie, the burden's on you to object. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And there's actually there's stuff that I've seen. That's why anybody, if there's a lawyer there, you have to object because they're testifying. Okay, they testify, and they don't have first-hand knowledge of anything. So they're saying that you did this and you did that. Well, objection. He's got no first-hand knowledge. Mm-hmm. Where's the evidence? You know what I mean? But if you don't object, it's admitted as the truth because they're not supposed to lie under their rules. You see what I'm saying? And people don't realize that's what's going on. Anyways.
And they collude with each other.
Oh, of
They
course.
just rack up fees for everybody. It's just
Of course.
it's a racket.
Yeah.
It's a definition of a racket.
Yeah.
So my question while you were out, I don't know if you heard my question, and it had to do with municipal judge.
Uh-huh.
Is most of us would think a municipal judge means a municipality of a city. But is the gold fringe flag proof that that court is a municipal court?
Well, all government corporations are municipal corporations by definition. So then think about it. If all government corporations are municipal corporations, then it would make sense that all judges are municipal judges.
That was the point. That was the conclusion I came to, and why I wanted to bring it up, because this week I hope to be helping Ken, getting him the information he needs on why when he walks in there with that de jure flag. Yeah.
I think that, hey, bringing up what Carl said too, is what you do is set them up, okay? And you say, well, am I entitled to a fair trial? And if there's a conflict of interest on anybody's part, does that mean that I won't? Is that a problem for a fair trial? And then, so then, who do you work for, and who do you work for, and who do you work for?
Check your email when I found the PDF version.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so I send it to you.
Okay, good.
Gmail.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that'll be good. That'd be something for Ken. Right. Okay, I'll send that to Ken. But so, anyways, it's all comes down to these, these lawyers are just the scum of the earth, in my opinion. Does anybody have anything else they want to cover? Because we're still a little bit early here. It's only 2:30.
What was that that crypto that you mentioned yesterday? Started with a V, I think.
Veritasium.
Veritasium?
Yeah. How do you spell that?
Veritasium, Verataseum. Let's coin market cap. So, and then Veri is the symbol.
V-R-E-Y.
Yeah, VERI.
V-E-R-I.
Right there. So if you go to the CoinMarketCap website, it'll tell you where it's being traded, the markets.
Okay.
Dodo. There's not too many. There's less than there used to be. Huh.
How many are there? 3?
There's Dodo. So I don't even never heard of that one. Trade Ogre, I'd never heard of that one either. That's where you'd buy it if you want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bunch of them here. I can show you on I have them in my Exodus wallet. I've got 80 of them in this wallet, and I've got some more in another Exodus wallet. So there's wallets so you can keep them, but to buy them is the question, is how do you buy them? And it looks like see here, I've got 80 of them in this wallet, which comes to about $2,100 worth.
Mm-hmm.
They're $23. I bought a bunch of them. See, there's Veritasium and Exodus.
Okay, and this is just an online wallet. It's not like a separate.
It's a private wallet.
Okay, but it comes up on your phone. It's not
Yeah, it's an app.
Okay.
It's an app. But you can hold different kinds of coins in it. That's the reason I use it.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch of different kinds of coins you can have in it. But it's no different than, like, there's several wallets like that. There's coin-only. And I have a coin-only wallet on this phone, too, I think. I don't use the coin-only wallet that much, though. Jack's Liberty is another one, Mycelium.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a couple other wallets that it's going to want me to log in, and I'm not even sure if I have the password for it right now. Yeah, that's the one to set up a wallet. There's so Jack's Liberty, and there's Mycelium, and there's several wallets. You have to be careful though, because some of them are not private wallets on your phone. There you have to go to a website, which means that it's really not private.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on an exchange. You don't want coins on an exchange because exchanges are like banks,
Yeah.
and they spend it when you think you have some there and you really don't. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty careful about which wallets I use. This Exodus wallet is one that was recommended by that guy, that Jason and Poor guy that gets the dreams. And so I his opinion is a good opinion in my opinion. And so I'm just looking to see where the coin-only wallet is.
And when you purchase them, then you somehow you have to move them over your wallet.
Right. Yeah, you send them. What you do here? Let me get my Exodus wallet back up. And I send money in and out of this thing all the time.
Exodus.
Yeah. So, if you go to, well, you can't see it here. Let's actually there. If you go here, it'll say I received 80 coins in 2024. I sent 45 coins in December 8. This is all the transactions that I've had in and out of that wallet. So I've had this wallet for quite a while.
Yeah.
It goes back September 3rd of 2018 when I first got this wallet. But so, at least for Veritasium, so I've Ripple. Let's see how long ago I transactions for that one. December 24th, 2021. So I haven't had Ripple in and out of here, that long. But what happens is, like Veritasium, you can't exchange it, but most of them you can exchange. You can just exchange it like this. You can exchange it from one coin to another, or you can send it. And what you do then is you say how much you want to send, and you can scan. It's to receive it. It's the same thing. So you scan to receive it. You just scan that QR code, and that's the address. Okay. So you scan it, and then send the coins, and it'll come to this wallet. And so I have a Coinbase account, and so if I get to send it from Coinbase to here, then that's what I do.
You still have to purchase it on an exchange.
You got to buy it on an exchange.
But you don't hold it there.
I wouldn't keep it there. That's right. Yeah. And or you can, like Veritasium. I'm positive you can't get it at like a Bitcoin ATM. But there's Bitcoin ATMs around, and you can buy Bitcoin at a Bitcoin ATM, and you just feed in $100 bills, and it'll give you a paper wallet. We can go on a field trip sometime, and there's Bitcoin ATMs around here. It's easy to do a search and find one.
Yeah.
And we can go and do a field trip if you want and buy some Bitcoin. But I don't really want to. The Bitcoin ATMs are expensive compared to like Coinbase.
Yeah.
Once you have the Coinbase account set up, it's a lot less expensive. It's probably the cheapest way to buy cryptos is on an exchange like Coinbase.
Yeah.
And then once you have it there, you can send it to your, if I bought it at an ATM, I'd have it scan the QR code and then send it directly to my wallet.
Yeah.
And so then I just have it in my phone.
Yeah.
But it's really not in your phone. You have to understand, it's in the blockchain.
Yeah.
So you could drop that phone as long as you keep the seed phrase. There's a seed phrase for these wallets, and you got to write that down somewhere and keep it safe. So then if you drop your phone in a bucket of water, it don't matter.
Yeah.
Just buy another phone, install the app, and then put the seed phrase in, and it's all there. See what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep.
So that's the important thing for security. And we're going to go through that when we go through the cryptocurrency thing.
Yeah.
But so yeah. So this is CoinMarketCap. This is the to find out about any cryptocurrency. This is the place to go. It's called CoinMarketCap, and they have an app too. It's the same thing on your phone. Right here is on my phone. So I have a watch list, and these are the cryptos that I watch. But this is the CoinMarketCap app on your phone, and so you can. So then, so what I would do is go find rotation, and then markets. Trade orders is the only one that shows. Right, trade over. I never even heard of trade over, but yeah. So Cartuzzi, I buy that on Coinbase. A lot of these you can buy on Coinbase, but
the better
Veritasium, yeah, you have to. There's only limited, and trade over is probably overseas somewhere. And if you go there with a US IP address, then it won't let you in. That's why I use a VPN.
Have fun.
See you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Right here's my VPN. So right now I'm surfing from Washington, D.C., but I can surf from anywhere on the planet. And it'll show that I'm surfing from that location. And see here. These are all the places I can surf from. Canada, Bahamas, Greenland, Ecuador, UK, France, Netherlands, Sweden. I mean, all over the world.
But you can't buy it from a US VPN?
That is a US VPN.
Okay.
They're based in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah. PIA, private internet access. It's quite reasonable. Cost me like $100 for 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what's that called?
And you can pay with cryptos, so they don't really know who you are.
Yeah. And that's you call
It's
it
called private internet access, PIA.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
There's lots of VPNs out there.
there is.
You just got to make sure as well you get one that doesn't log.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah. Well, they don't. According to these, they don't keep. According to this, they don't keep records, but so then there's looks like an update. See, there's my settings and stuff like that. But that's called private internet access. See right here? Mm-hmm. Private internet access. and you can surf from literally anywhere on the planet. China, if you want to surf from China, you can surf from China. Probably 3 or 4 cities in China.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so it's useful because, like, if you want to go to, like, I have exchanges, I have cryptos in overseas exchanges right now. I've got like $20,000 in an exchange waiting for Ripple to drop down to 20 cents, and I'll buy. When it does, it'll execute, and I'll get like about 77,000 Ripple.
Ripple is the XRM?
XRP.
XRP.
Yeah.
That's what you guys were talking about?
Yeah. That's a bankster coin. And it's eventually, according to Cliff High, it's going to go away, but there's going to be huge swings. So right now, Jason Empor said that he saw it in a dream at 20 cents. And so I have an open order to buy 77,000, and at 20 cents, 21 cents, there's like 3 or 4 orders. So I put them 21, 20, 23, around there. And so right now it's at $2. So if I buy it at that price and it goes back to $2, which will be easy, some people say that it's going to be worth thousands. I have no idea, and I don't really care. I have my target. I'll buy it low, and I'll ride it up, and I'll take some profit, and I might keep all of it until it goes to wherever. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is that I don't let myself get caught up in the emotional stuff. I take my profit and I'm good. You know what I mean? If and I just buy it's the swing trading. Do the swing trading,
Yeah.
But Veritasium is the one that Reggie Middleton. That is an Ethereum based token,
Okay.
and so that's why it's set up to do smart contracts, and that's what Cliff High said that he saw, is that everything would be. Remember that article on CNBC I was showing you yesterday with BlackRock CEO, what's his name, saying that Fink,
Oh, Larry Fink.
yeah, Larry Fink was saying that everything's ripe to be tokenized. And that's what it'll be. It'll be tokenized with Veritasium, according to Cliff High. So, anyways, and I've never heard of Trade Ogre. Let's go see where Trade Ogre is. Spot trading. Well, here's their website. Oh, look at that. There it is.
The stream still going, by the way?
Sorry?
Is the stream still going?
It's what?
The live stream?
Yeah, it is. I was wondering if there was anything anybody else wants to talk about. I guess we'll be done. It's been going on for 2 hours, so we'll cancel the live stream. Thanks, everybody, for watching.